Welcome to the Your Message Received podcast. And now, taking your message to the finish line, your host, John Duffett.
Hey folks, John Duffett here, Duffett Media. Welcome back to another episode of Your Message Received. Your Message Received is the place, the home, the podcast to help you find your best, most true, authentic business voice. Hell, make it your best voice. Get what you want, find what you need, improve your results, make billions of dollars, meet the person of your dreams. We can't quite guarantee those last two yet. We're working really hard at that. But the rest of it, we can. And the reason I can feel quite confident about all of that is because we bring people onto the show who actually have walked the walk. Today, no exception at all. I get a chance to bring my friend, Philadelphia native, real estate mogul, and all-around great good person, Maria Quattrone. Maria, welcome very much to the show.
Hi, John. So thankful and grateful that you're having me on today. Great to see you.
Thank you. It's a blast to have you on. Folks, if you don't know already, and we will certainly go backwards on this as well as forwards, but right off the bat, one of the reasons you probably, if you've got access to social media, that you know Maria, it wouldn't be just the real estate prowess, but it would be the absolute extensive social media prowess too. And we're going to get to that in regards to that level of confidence and trying new things. But Maria is all over the place in regards to being, and I mean that in a good way, all over the place in regards to that level of just commitment to being on social, the videos and all that stuff. Knowing that, I'll ask you right off the bat, were you always a confident person? Were you always, say, growing up, did you see yourself in regards to being, we'll say, like a video presence, a media presence, or all that sort of thing? Was that you?
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I had confidence and I have confidence. But in the beginning, when I started the videos, the probably first time I did was 2010.
Okay.
And that was really an early adopter at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I did it for a little while and then I gave up on that. It was very time consuming. Video wasn't as prevalent as it is today.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I'd stuck with it back then. I probably would be way further along in my social media growing.
Mm-hmm.
But it is what it is. And here we are today.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And speaking of local in Philadelphia, and one of the things that you have in common, well, with a number of people that we both know, but also in regards to my sister Maureen, you're a communications major at Temple University. And when you were going to get that degree, did you know in your mind that it's like, okay, I'm going to be a communications person? Or was it just something that interested you? What got you to be in that level of pursuit?
So I went to Temple University. You're correct, John. And I went there for a degree in the School of Communications, theater. And at first I thought I was going to go and be a TV journalist and report news or something like that. Then I realized that I have to go to like somewhere in Missouri to get a job and to start my career. And I was like, nah, don't want to do that. I don't want to start at these little tiny places. So I switched gears and then got into advertising sales, as you're aware, back in, let's see what year that was, 1994. And so fast forward, here we are today.
I love, we have weird connections with numbers in a good way. So Maria and I have one more thing that we have in common is we both come from the ad sales world. And I guarantee you, I did not think that I was going into the ad sales space. I did not think, like, in terms of growing up, it wasn't even an option. My sisters were the two that got me to take the leap in. They were both, to me, the gold standard. They were both in before me. They were both great. They still are both great. But I'm going to say that I remember that it's like, and I remember thinking, if I was half as good as they were, then I'll do okay. And I say the weird thing with the numbers, I got in, it was really 1993, that I got into the ad sales space, and I was more the TV side. Look, I remember you talking in other videos in regards to the reasons you made the leap from that field, but I'm always curious, what were the gifts that you got from that? Meaning, like, what did you enjoy the most? What has transferred to you now? You get into the ad sales space, which I can tell you, anyone who knows it or has been around it, is a very competitive space. And a lot of the challenges back then in the 90s was getting in at all. Once you got in, it was awful. What was it like for you in the beginning? What are some of the things, like the positive memories that you have in regards to that opportunity?
So it was really hard,
Mhm.
and it was a lot of fun as well. I would say that the difficulties were just being able to get sales in the beginning and
Right.
connect with people.
Mhm.
And so what I decided to
Mhm.
do was to connect with people by going door to door their
Mhm.
businesses,
Mhm.
and meet them
Mhm.
essentially at their place of business. And this way, it gave me some kind of control. So I would go in,
Mhm.
not basically door knock, go into the store, find out who was the owner, who handled the advertising.
Mhm.
And now I had either the gatekeeper's name or the connection
Mhm.
to the owner and their information. So now I
Mhm.
had built confidence. And when I called them, I wasn't calling blindly. I said, "Hey, Frank, I stopped in your
Mhm.
store Friday. I know that you're in on Fridays. They told me that, and I'd like to set an appointment with you
Mhm.
for next Friday. Would you be available to talk about how we can grow your business
Mhm.
utilizing, advertising?" So that was one of the things that I learned, was not giving up. And it was really, really difficult. I was given a book, like a yellow pages, and a pad of paper and a pen and a phone and a box of
Mhm.
business cards, and they
Mhm.
said, "Go at it."
Yeah.
So I had to figure things out, hence
Mhm.
be the solution.
Mhm. Oh God, that's a familiar phrase. You want to work with that. Um, folks, we'll get way more to be the solution part in a while. And I love the learning like the lineage of it. But what I want to ask you is this. You said you built confidence. Were you always confident, and the door knocking part, anybody can do that for a day or a portion of a day. You get out there and you got your cards and you're all dressed up, but it's the staying out there that to me was always the differentiator, so to speak. Going in, was confidence a strong suit of yours?
I think as a child,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's something that was instilled in me,
Mhm,
that you could do anything that you want to
mhm,
do. It's really up to you to take the action,
mhm,
but whatever you can dream up, you
mhm.
can do. Everything's figure outable.
Your family was the very supportive type?
They were. They had their own set of challenges,
Mhm,
like
mhm.
every family.
Yeah.
However, they did instill in me confidence,
Mhm,
creativity.
mhm,
I'm a Gen Xer, so
mhm.
you don't know where your kids, and when you grew up being a Gen Xer, it's like go out and play in the traffic and I'll see you for dinner. You best be home for dinner, and then you go back out and come home when it's dark out.
Mhm,
So as Gen Xers, we would
mhm,
ride our bikes all around. Nobody knew where it
mhm,
was. Nobody cared where we
mhm,
were. As long as we were, doing anything
mhm,
terribly bad, parents really didn't care. There was other children in the house, and
mhm,
I don't say they didn't care. I don't think parents generally at that time, they were like, go at it.
mhm,
Go play dodgeball in the street, go do whatever you kids do. Ride your bike, go
mhm.
to the recreation center. That's how we grew up anyway.
Maria, I'm laughing with you because that's so very much how we grew up in Northeast Philadelphia. And folks, if you don't know by now, I'm always happy to share. I'm a Northeast Philadelphia boy, and that's 1000% it. But why I'm laughing is so much the sense that when you hear that out loud in late we'll just say early 2024, knowing that it isn't a live recording, but knowing that I can't even hear that without laughing, because when I know everybody knows people with kids, so I'm no exception. They couldn't process an hour of that day. Parents now, they couldn't process an hour of that day, let alone an all day thing. And it's like they've got intercoms in their own homes now. And if there's an hour where they don't hear each other, it's what would it be like? Like for you, it was a normal dynamic, and it was for me. So you're carrying that confidence, and I think it's great in that sense of this is how it goes. Were you ever like when you start to getting through Temple and you're starting out and you're all polished up and you're knocking on doors and all that stuff? This whole show is about what we call the art to authenticity. And I'm always that sense. Do you remember, like you said, it was difficult? Do you remember the difficulties for you getting started?
Oh yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm.
I would be in my car crying. I wanted to quit.
Mm.
I wanted to give up. I would be hiding in the bathroom
Mm-hmm.
or outside, like
Mm-hmm.
smoking cigarettes,
Mm-hmm.
hiding. Um, it was hard, and I didn't really know how hard it was going to be,
Mm-hmm.
but I did know that I wasn't going back. Meaning, I wasn't going back
Mm-hmm.
to. I was working I was in college in a bar,
Mm-hmm.
nightclub. That's what clubs, like you club. That was what you did back
Mm-hmm.
in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
late 80s, 90s. We all went to clubs,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes 5 days a week. I wasn't going back to that industry,
Mm-hmm.
and I had graduated college. And so I wanted to make a career in advertising sales,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed to get through this first job so I could get to the next job.
Mm.
And so I persisted.
Mm-hmm.
My dad would say, just go, keep going back. I kept showing up,
Mm-hmm.
and I kept doing something, some kind of work every day,
Mm-hmm.
even if it wasn't calling all day. I actually, some days I was on the phone calling all day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the numbers were something like I had to call 100 people to get 10 appointments to close
Okay.
two, something like that. Real estate's a lot easier than that. You don't have to call
Right.
that many people to get that many sales, if you know what you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
anyway. One of the things that I learned though in the industry was
Yeah.
that people, they love my enthusiasm,
Mm-hmm.
my heart, my generosity.
Mm-hmm.
I was always willing to help somebody out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that enthusiasm is underrated. I think when you show up with a smile,
Mm-hmm.
and even if all this other stuff is going on, and guess what? We all have all this other stuff going on,
Mm-hmm.
but as a professional, it's your job to give your client the best experience possible.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't need to know every single thing that's going on in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know that everybody has all kinds of shit going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes you can talk about it or whatever, but generally, not everybody needs to know every single thing.
I remember for me that it could be an escape for me. Not that I love my life and I've loved like my upbringing, but if I had things going on in my mind, or if I was beating myself up confidence wise, the way that one of the easiest ways for me to remove myself from it was to throw myself more in it, and then that way that was my outlet in regards to forcing myself to become more confident. And I love that sense. And when you just said in regards to your dad, just do one more thing, I think that's great, because I've become a big believer. You don't have to be, but I was going to say in the sense that my parents really did instill a lot, and it didn't have to be a complete blueprint. It certainly wasn't. But those pieces were enough for me to go through an extra day or two. I love that sense that you just kept going. Do you remember, and because I'm splitting this a little bit in regards to real estate and this, and then we obviously will head to the solution, but more in the sense of, do you remember when it turned for you, in the sense that it's like, oh, this is going to work. This is going to work. And I made the right call. And do you remember?
Absolutely. So
What's it like?
I've been door knocking
Mhm.
and I've been getting some traction.
Mhm.
And so I went to my boss at the time and I said to him, okay, so I don't understand this. Everybody's selling like 4 weeks at a time. Is there a
Mhm.
reason why we're not selling longer programs?
Right.
And so we made
Mhm.
up package A, B, and
Mhm.
C.
Mhm.
13 weeks, 26
Mhm.
weeks, 52 weeks. And with as you bought more, the price
Mhm.
came down and you
Mhm.
got more value add
Mhm.
into your program. And so
Mhm.
what happened within a 16-month time frame, I became the number 2 salesperson
Mhm.
at the company behind the person that has been there already for 20 years and
Mhm.
had all the big annual contracts.
Mhm. Mhm.
And at that point, I decided that I was going to go into Philadelphia radio because I
Mhm.
was working in Linwood, New Jersey,
Mhm.
and my future boss at the time, when I
Mhm.
interviewed with them when I was in college, so I did my internship at KYW TV,
Mhm.
which was at that time an NBC affiliate, as you
Mhm.
know, it's a
Sure.
CBS affiliate
Yeah.
today. And so I was at the Fifth and Market location, and
Mm.
my boss at the time was married to the general manager of
Mhm.
the radio station,
Mhm.
general sales manager, Sil Scaglione.
Mhm.
And I went back to him and I said, Sil, I've been in the industry 16 months. I have experience. I would like the job. And so he pushed me on the local sales manager who I ended up interviewing with several times. And I did get the job at
Mhm.
WYXR, Star 104.5,
Mhm.
and started with them in, I guess, sometime in 96.
Mhm. You come in from Linwood, New Jersey. I worked in Atlantic City, New Jersey. WFPG is where I officially broke in. Um, and I love that. So you come in. What was it like for you? You already identified, and I loved when you shared that story before of the way that you created packages. I think that's great because that it's so funny that no one had thought of that, and that when you did, it exploded. But when you hear it now, it's like, well, of course, that's what you would do. So being an innovator that you were like that, I just think is really cool. How were you able to take the lead, so to speak, um, amongst a field where everyone else has more seniority than you, and or they're part of the larger market than you, and she's new and she's from Winwood and blah blah. How were you able, because you did, and I know that. It was like, what were some of the things that you were able to differentiate yourself from to become a lead in a serious market?
I would say hard work.
Okay. Mhm.
I would say that first in, last out.
Mhm.
F uh FOLO, right?
Oh,
First
thank you. I was trying to get
F
it
I
took me a minute.
L oh
Elo.
FILL, first in, last out.
Yep.
Good
You
old hard work
yep.
ethic.
Mhm.
Another one of my little sayings, work
Mhm.
works. You work.
Mhm.
Let me
Mhm.
repeat that. Work
Work works.
works. I never saw somebody
Mhm.
who put the time and
Mhm.
effort into selling something
Mhm.
and didn't succeed.
See, that's important. By the way, folks, Maria still uses works, and every time she uses it on a current video, it still gets my attention. It still grabs me in a cool way. But you just said something significant when you just said, I've never seen someone not make it when they haven't followed that very simple blueprint. And so it's like the sense of how do you keep how did you keep yourself just working? How did you keep yourself doing? What were the motivators, if you remember? What were the drivers for you in
Okay, so
regards to
when I
making sure?
entered at Star 104.5,
Yeah.
I was living at my parents' house in
Mm,
Medford, New Jersey.
mhm,
So my motivator at that time was to get out of there and get an
mm,
apartment in
mhm,
around town.
mhm,
So that was my motivation at that point in time.
mhm,
And then once I got the apartment, the motivation was a bigger apartment. The motivation was then buy a house and
mhm,
then, a lot of outward influences.
mhm,
I guess, perhaps.
Yeah.
I wanted to be the best.
Mhm.
I didn't, yeah, there's a lot of senior people there,
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
lot, and I would
Mhm.
get a little mad, I
Mhm.
remember. I was a difficult employee as well.
How so?
I just wanted, to do my thing.
Mhm.
I would say, just me. And I told people like it
Mhm.
is.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's not always the most popular thing to do, but
Definitely no.
I think it is the best thing to do.
Mhm.
I still do that.
I see that huge smile on your face as you're saying it, so it certainly doesn't feel like it was the wrong thing to do. But yeah, it's one of the things you shared, and then I'd love to move in terms of your leap in 2006. You've shared why you felt like it was like you had to leave that industry and the caps and the limitations, and we'll say the armor or whatever, those chains that tied you in. You move into real estate, and I think it was 2006, if I remember correctly.
2004.
Okay, got it. So, and that's that. I love this. So, when you make the leap, I found for myself personally, when I got licensed to Keller Williams, I felt with a million people within the office and teams and leadership and whatever, I felt like I'm always curious. I felt alone is actually, and I didn't know that I loved it. Like for me, when I transitioned out of broadcast ad sales, and it was definitely time in my mind, like I had been there for over 25 years and it was definitely time. Um, but I also liked and the sense of camaraderie and teamwork and all that sort of thing, where I remember I felt alone. What was it like for you in the transition going from that and then you enter real estate?
So I entered real estate in February, March of 2004,
Right.
and I was working at a very, very small brokerage firm
Hmm.
with the actual broker, and I had a couple colleagues
Hmm.
there. I did have like a little team, so to speak, but I
Okay.
wasn't necessarily the team leader.
Hmm.
I loved going into work there. I
Hmm.
was still also working in radio advertising sales at
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
time. And so
Got it. Got
I
it.
basically did two
Hmm.
full-time careers
Hmm.
simultaneously
Hmm.
for the better part of, I guess, all of '04. And then February 5th, 2005 was my last
Hmm.
day in radio.
Hmm.
And I was in the industry only for a couple months full time, meaning was always full time, but
Hmm.
meaning no other thing to distract me.
Yeah.
And I needed an assistant.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I was my own assistant, and that was
Hmm.
terrible.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
had to get an
Mhm.
assistant.
Mhm.
And then I was busy. I had business. I hit the ground running.
Mhm.
People didn't know where I came from. But remember, I told you I started door knocking
Oh, yeah.
in 1993
Mhm.
or 4 or whatever.
Mhm.
1993, I guess, 94. But I door knocked way before that. My first
Mhm.
door knocking experience, I was probably about 9 or 10 years old,
Mhm.
on the streets in Northeast Philadelphia,
Mhm.
where I grew up.
Mhm.
And where I grew up, either you went to Catholic school or you went
Mhm.
to public school. And either you were Catholic and you went to the Catholic school, or you were Jewish and you went to public school.
Mhm.
And so there was really nothing that much in between.
Mhm.
That was just the neighborhood we grew up in. So I went door to door selling Hanukkah and Christmas paper and cards.
Mhm.
And I would say that was my first door knocking experience. And, then I would go door knocking, caroling. I would bring my brothers and
Did you
sisters and
really?
be like,
Okay.
yeah, caroling, a caroling, a caroling we go.
I didn't know you had a good singing voice. Wow. Wow, wow. As soon as you started to sing, I'm like, "Oh, I get it." That is great.
So I'll tell you something funny.
Please do.
We usually host Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, or one
Right.
of some kind of combination.
Mhm.
And so I've been working a lot. I've taken no vacations this year.
Right.
Haven't been on vacation since September of 2022, which for
Mhm.
me is a long time.
Is an eternity, right? So,
Yeah, and so the only time I was off is when I had COVID this year,
mhm.
and I had a, sinus infection a few weeks ago.
You're due.
Hmm.
You're due.
So I haven't taken vacation, so
Right.
I decided that I don't need to be giving myself any added stress
Yep.
of it's not just like going, I'll buy the food and cook it. I'm not
Mhm.
like an orderer and just like I'm just not. That's not who
Mhm.
I am.
Mhm.
Because then I'm like mad that it's not as good as I would have made it. So then I have FOMO of that. And then, it is a big deal when you have to take out all the glassware,
Mhm.
all the serving
Mhm.
plates, cleaning and everything up, prepping everything, buying everything, this and that.
Mhm.
And I decided that, well, I have plans Christmas
Mhm.
Eve, and Christmas Day, none of which require me cooking except for bringing something there. So I said to my friend,
Yes.
For Christmas Eve, so I'm going to a
Mhm.
friend's house. And I said, only I have one request.
Mhm.
She's like, what is it? I
Right.
said, that we sing Christmas carols. That's my one request
So,
on Christmas Eve after we
did
go to
she
church.
flinch at first when you were
No,
said
she's
that?
like,
Or
I'm so excited. I have a karaoke machine.
oh, there you go. Um,
Sorry.
don't
Digress.
be.
I
But
digress.
I want to go back. But here's my follow-up question. So the karaoke machine's going, right? What would be a request from you to be like, oh,
What
stop
song?
that one? Yeah.
Hmm. I like I'll Be Home for Christmas.
Mm.
I like the Christmas song.
How do I know it,
Nat
but
King Cole.
oh, all right.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
I didn't know that was the title of the song.
Jack Frost nipping at your
Mm.
nose.
See, this is so you're a classics person then. So in terms of that more so, and I'm all over the place. So that's not a judgy thing. I'm just saying more, you know what I mean? That it's like, but you have an appreciation for the classics.
Indeed.
I love. This is great. So I'm thrilled that you went in that direction. We're gonna get back. Not only that, but the fact that you home cook everything and all. I love every single bit of this. But I also want to figure out too, taking like I said, one half step back, right? What got you to make the move outside of that small little office with the little team and you got your assistant and all that sort of thing? What
My
what
broker didn't want to be
Yeah.
broken. My broker didn't want to be broke anymore. And he said, you all have to find another place to go. I hate real estate agents.
So I didn't know that, and I really feel like I should have. I don't You can stay anywhere you want, just not here. So it's almost like last call at the
He didn't
club.
want any agents. In all kidding, he wanted
Mhm.
just to do development deals
Mhm.
and find his own investments and things like that. So we had to find a new home.
Right.
We did find a new home at Mercury Real Estate Group. We
Mhm.
actually stayed in the same office.
Mhm.
Joe, who was the broker of that
Right.
company, he just took that lease over,
Mhm.
and Stephen and his company, APM Real Estate, moved to another office space.
Mhm.
And then 6 months into it, I was not,
Mhm.
I don't want to say happy because
Mhm.
nobody determines your happiness except for yourself.
Right.
I was not on the same page
Mhm.
with my broker at the time. Their main business was in South Philly. We were in around Center City.
Right.
And I just decided that I was going to go with a bigger name company,
Mhm.
which I did for then 8.5 years.
Yep. When did you get the confidence to become the broker yourself?
Well, I'm just for technology,
Oh,
technical
technical
terms,
reasons?
technical reasons, I
Mhm.
am not the broker of record.
So I still feel like you are. All right, never mind. Okay. but you lead the office. You lead
Yeah, yeah.
the
I just
people.
I'm not the responsible broker.
Oh, that's okay. Uh, I feel like in terms of the leadership, to me, one of the, I think, tougher transitions, and you got there, was going from that sense of when you're knocking on doors and you're all by yourself and you have to prove yourself, and then you're by yourself and you get to prove yourself. There's a bit of freedom that comes from that sense of being able to do it. It's tough, like you were saying. I remember how hard it was, and you're not alone when you're saying I was like crying in the car. You ain't rolled by yourself on that. But the freedom of doing it was kind of great for me. I remember the first time I took a managerial job, in that sense when you were a little bit more locked in because people need you and people are relying on you. So, as what was it like for you becoming a leader? You move to the bigger firm, you make your mark, and now you become a leader where people need you. What was that like for you?
Again, something difficult to deal with,
Mhm,
something new.
mhm,
I don't think you just like walk into that. I think you're constantly have to be in leadership role. You
mhm,
have to always be open to learning, to be open
mhm,
to have empathy.
mhm,
That's something that I had to
mm,
learn.
mhm,
Empathy. I think you need to have to be a visionary. You need to be an executor or
mhm,
implementer or have an implementer by your side.
mhm,
Because ideas without implementation or execution are worthless. You
mhm,
could have every idea under the sun, but until you execute on it and take action.
mhm,
So I think that there's a lot involved with it.
mhm,
I think though that you have to create leaders within your organization.
mm,
I don't believe in I call it you got to manage up. So training your people to manage up,
mhm,
to lead, from the front,
mhm,
to build your organization from um your subculture. So your subculture is people that are in your culture that you want to add more people like them into your culture. Um, nobody's culture is perfect or great.
mhm.
I think a lot of people come into real estate thinking, okay, well, it should be a perfect company. There's no perfect company
Mhm.
because we're all human that are in the company. As far as I know, we're all human.
Yeah, so far. Oh, I mean, AI is coming, but it ain't here yet. So, like I said, we're
And
going to assume
therefore, if there's humans,
Mhm,
God didn't make any of us perfect.
mhm,
So there are going to be F ups and
mhm.
there's going to be things that you don't like either,
Right.
and you might not like what people say.
Mhm.
I think that real estate is an easy industry to get into and an easy industry to exit from. I think right now
Yeah.
there'll be a lot of self-select exit
Mhm,
that we haven't seen in the
mhm.
last 10 years or 8 years or
Right.
so. With this year, with just under 4 million sales,
Mhm,
which about 2 million sales less than last year. I mean,
mhm,
you could do the math and figure out like either you have to do a lot more
mhm,
to reach a lot
mhm.
less people, or business is gonna be
Evaporate.
non-significant.
Mhm. And you got to do something. You were talking about cultures and subcultures. By the way, folks, we have a friend in common, and I don't know if I know Jay Duran without Maria Quattrone. I don't. I mean, we met outside of Maria, but I just feel like you were at least an indirect conduit between someone who's all about culture and all about creating a company. Um, and love Jay to death. So if you're listening, God, I hope you are. Jay, thank you and hello. But here's the question, Maria, that for you, what was the first culture, you were talking about cultures and subculture, what was the first culture that you wanted to instill in terms of, you're talking about managing up and all that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, in the beginning, I was terrible.
Uh,
I didn't know how to be a manager, and
mhm,
I would go around yelling at people. Well, that's what happened in radio. I got yelled at all the time.
Oh, I know the feeling. I know.
I remember my one boss, my
Mhm.
boss's boss's boss.
Okay.
He put me on a chair and he circled me and yelled at me while he was walking around me, screaming at me.
I'm making a face, folks. If you're listening on audio, you don't see that. I'm not trying to do that intentionally because I know it's true. I get it. But if I didn't know that, I absolutely I wouldn't believe it. I'd be like, well, that can't be. You're an adult. But I saw
But
that and I heard that.
this is how businesses were run back in the mid
Mhm.
90s.
Right.
Like, so, I grew up being yelled at by my parents. I grew up being yelled at work.
At school.
So I didn't think anything of it either.
Was the person
So I
that's
guess I was a
working in
big
a
bully and I
circle?
was what?
Was the person that's walking in a circle a man?
He was and
Oh,
is.
that's funny. How about that? So, I'm listen, it sounds like an indictment to me, but I mean, with more
He told me that
Mm.
my sails blow like the wind.
Not laughing at you, laughing with you. That's Jesus.
I had a really couple good months and I had a bad month. I mean,
Mhm.
you know,
That's how it goes. And I feel like this is where that sense of endurance and resilience. Why do you think for you? Now, maybe you explained it by saying, "Hey, I was accustomed to it, school, family, whatever." What what kept you in? Because I watched a lot of people, that was their exit strategy, was get yelled at one too many times, and then out the door they were. And you couldn't blame them. I mean, like I said, they were just literally defeated, and it was like, "Ooh, what kept you
in the
in the
radio.
field?" Like when that's going on, right? This goof bag is walking around like you're 7 years old. What
I
kept you in?
think that I think I have a high um resistance to trauma.
Okay.
I think that I dealt with so many things
Mhm.
that I don't let things shatter me.
Mhm.
I gained also perspective as I went through life.
Mhm.
And I mean, I just looked at it like business. It's not
Mm.
personal.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's the way he communicated.
Mhm.
And I took it on the chin,
Mhm.
right? I came back to work the next day.
So in addition to
Probably cried, but
well, I would.
I mean,
Maybe not literally, or maybe
I
a
don't
little
know.
bit.
I probably cried. I think I did.
You talked about handling trauma. Here's what also I gathered from it, maybe I'm guessing, is that you were very forgiving and very understanding. Is that something like a skill that I mean, obviously it comes in handy, but I mean, were you always like that you were like interpreting things rather than shutting down? That's a really intuitive thing to say in terms of all of it. Um, the forgiveness part. Is that always a part of you? I'm guessing it's a part of you now.
No, it wasn't always a part.
Mhm. Where do you think it came from?
Learning more about myself and being
Mm,
in acceptance of myself.
mm,
Also, forgiving them for me, not for them. The forgiveness comes in
yep,
so that I'm okay with it.
mhm,
I don't need their forgiveness or I don't
mhm,
need, right?
right,
I look at it, okay,
mhm,
I'm going to forgive you for me.
mhm. Do you think that skill is transferable?
No.
Got it. So that's what made part of what makes you you.
No, I mean, I think you can learn that.
Yeah.
I think that I can't
Mhm,
transfer it to you today.
mhm,
You have to learn it and you have to work through your own shit
mhm, yep,
to get there.
mhm,
It's not like I can show you how to do a deal on napkin math with how
mhm.
to do forgiveness.
Right, exactly. But you know what though? You said at first I was a terrible manager in terms of like from
I
your
don't know if I'm that much better, but I
okay. Folks,
I think I'm better.
I was in Maria's office
I think I'm
multiple
better.
times recently. You definitely would have to be. You never felt like, to me personally, as the performance type, right? I mean, that's not you, like putting on a performance. That's not your thing, right? Or is it?
No,
Yeah, no. I never felt that way about you.
not my thing.
So knowing that ain't your thing, and I go into your office at least 3 times, maybe 4 in the last, say, couple of months. And people are just kind to each other. Things get done. Maria is in that office, and you're hearing it, folks, or watching it, a very soft-spoken person in that office. So for what is not the biggest real estate space ever, and I'm not counting the basement, I'm just counting the main drag, right? Multiple people. I didn't hear it. I couldn't even fathom anybody screaming, right? You're saying
Yeah,
not all that much.
nobody's screaming.
Right,
I was
right.
like kidding around, but
I know. So
I
it's
would I would say that, there definitely is in our office,
right.
there is a sense of here's the reality,
Yeah.
and
Mhm,
I'm not sugarcoating what's required.
mhm,
And you all signed up to be in this business. So
mhm,
I'm going to tell you what y'all need to do to move
mhm,
forward. And a lot of people don't like the answer
mhm.
because it's called work works.
Works, right.
So here's my question I
Mhm.
would challenge with.
Yeah.
Okay. So, John, you didn't have any appointments today.
Mhm,
And I looked at your follow up boss and you didn't call any people either.
mhm,
And you have no pendings.
mhm.
Mhm.
So what do you
How,
expect?
how's that working for you?
Right. Right. It's but you don't say anything there harsh or cruel. It's as opposed to oh, I lost the expression. With the dude saying to you, you know what I mean? Your
Oh,
work
yeah.
blows, like your work blows, like it's like based on nothing, right?
No.
That's information and feedback is how I see and hear that. How's
Yeah,
that working for you? You know what I
absolutely,
mean?
absolutely. There's a certain amount of activity that you
Mhm.
need to do on a daily basis in
Right.
any sales organization.
Mhm,
And we're going to keep you accountable to what you
mhm.
said you're going to do because accountability is the highest form of love, right?
Okay, right? Exactly.
So we have to be accountable to each
Mhm,
other, be accountable to the team. If you're not calling the people in the database, then somebody else can and should be.
mhm,
That means you're taking opportunity from somebody else that could be using that opportunity.
mhm,
So, yeah, I mean, in this
mhm,
environment, you have to really get focused on what it is that you want to do. And right now, our focus is on winning the day.
mm, got it. Um, you brought up be the solution. So folks, it's one of my favorite expressions, and and Maria happens to have a, a if not an actual trademark, you actually have, like, is it
I actually have a trademark.
love it, because it is that powerful. When did you realize you talked about years and years prior in terms of realizing you needed to be the solution, and I love that. Um, I want to fast forward a little bit in terms of the marketing and the video content as it regards to be the solution. In regards, so I remember you sharing with me prior that this was started around the time of COVID. And so, what was it like, those beginning videos for you?
The beginning,
Yeah.
oh boy.
What did it feel like?
Well,
What was it like?
they're a lot different today than they were in the beginning.
No doubt, but I'm just curious in terms of what it
I
felt like
would
to you.
say that it was
Mhm.
definitely, oh boy, a challenge.
But what was the cool parts? Because I mean, you're trying
The cool
something new.
parts
Well, but you're trying
was
something
that
new.
I I was having a meltdown that I couldn't leave the
Yeah.
house
Mhm,
during COVID because I went out all the time to events and seeing people.
mhm,
So I had to figure out how to get in front of people. And
Mhm.
so we decided, the marketing team decided
Mhm.
that I was going to do lives Monday, Wednesday, and Friday
Mhm.
and talk about how we were being safe and
Mhm.
what things we were doing, to still sell real estate.
Mhm.
And it expanded from there. So my marketing team was like, look, we're going to do a podcast. We're going to turn
Mhm.
this into a podcast. And I'm like, podcast?
Right?
And I said, yes. So I said, well, we need to have a name for it. And I was just talking about this at lunch today with
Ah.
a new client. You know, I said, what do we do? And I looked back and I thought about 2006, 7, 8,
Mhm.
9, 10,
Mhm.
11. I said, we solve problems. We're the
Mhm.
solution.
Boom.
And so Be the Solution was
Mhm.
born. And since then, I have had the trademarked.
So 3 times a week was the launch point. And it's not the techniques because everybody's were terrible in the beginning, and I've shared that with you, that mine were train wrecks. My early podcast, one was so bad, and I was interviewing a former work colleague, and I'm thinking it's amazing. Amazing. We're so in sync. And then I remember our boss, who we both loved, comes back to me and he's like hurt. He was, I think, the first or the only one to hear. He's like, I don't know that I'd leave that podcast up. I'm like, what? He said, you two were telling so many inside stories that unless you were physically in the office space, nobody would know what the hell you were talking about. And I died because I remember I'm like, oh my God. And I'm more resilient than I give myself credit for, but I'm very thin-skinned still in regards to I love the way that you processed information back then and now, right? That took me a lot to get there. What? He was right. So I'm not ever worried about like someone's older videos. What I really pay attention to is the fact that you did it. You talked about starting with social and what have you and video in 2010, and I wish I had stayed with it. Well, great, but you did. And what got you to keep going? Because they're so easy to break those patterns because nobody's judging. What kept going to keep the videos going?
So we know that when you're on video,
Mhm.
the brain thinks that you're on TV. And what do people think when you're on TV?
Mhm. Pay attention. You're a celebrity.
Yeah.
You're an expert, certainly. You're obviously an expert, and you're a celebrity, and you're somebody that needs to be paid attention to.
So why not do video? Why did I keep
Mm,
doing video?
mhm. Yeah.
I actually did this beginning of this year until about halfway through.
Mhm.
I wasn't doing video. I
Mhm.
had a lot of things in my life going on, and I made the
Mhm.
decision.
Mhm.
And this, I'm not using an excuse. I
No.
I actually made the decision
Mhm.
to pull back for a moment
Mhm.
so I can readjust myself.
Mhm.
And then in June, I went back on the video. But since June 18th, I've done
Mhm.
a video, at least one every single day,
Every single day.
every single day.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I noticed when I look back
Mhm.
into videos from last year
Mhm.
that my voice is actually different.
When you
And
just described that, your voice was actually different than 5 minutes ago. Just so what just changed? What something just clicked in for you? Um, what is it? What do you think changed in regards to the sound of your voice? What was going on? Or I'm sorry, what is going on?
I think that doing so many videos
Mhm.
and not having a lot of times I'd be doing things like rolling my eyes and
Mhm.
looking around. And once you become still and
Mhm.
focused
Mhm.
and you're just listening to the other person,
Mhm.
I think that's a big part of it. A
Mm.
lot of these videos, though, that I do are by myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it does take focus when you
Mhm.
are on somebody else's video.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I recognize that you don't have to fill every single space with chatter. So, for example, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like filler words are not necessary. And the more confident that you become, the more there's no need for them. And it takes practice. I believe I've done between podcasts and being on others' podcasts and video, I probably have 700-800 assets,
Mm-hmm.
content. And so over time, just like if you're a professional sports player, I would
Right.
say football because the Eagles are on tonight.
Exactly. Go Birds.
Go Birds. So if you are a football player or basketball,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to practice and you're going to drill so much till you can't get it wrong anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a mistake that in our industry, in the real estate industry, John,
Mm-hmm.
that people just practice enough to get by and not enough to make it so that they can't do it wrong.
Right.
And the more you practice anything, unless you're practicing wrong, the more you
Right.
practice, the better you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going up against interviewing somebody who has never done a podcast, to me, having done 800 pieces of content, or it's probably more than that, but let's just say 800 piece of content, it's going to be a different outcome, right? I did have a guest on, and I don't believe they had ever done a video before.
How did you know?
It
What
was
was going on?
blatant, it was blatantly obvious. Blatantly obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular podcast, probably video will not be used on it.
Like my audio one with my work colleague, which got pulled
Probably,
down.
probably. So they did not do that a great of a job. And therefore, I'm not going to have that video on just so that I don't embarrass them.
Mm-hmm.
They.
I got you. So I noticed
I'm
something.
sorry, you hear me stumbling with they because it's still a new thing for me to say they,
Mm-hmm.
whereas he and she,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's awkward.
So I'll share back with you on just that specifically. And I'm no expert. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a gay man. And this is, but I remember being at a GLAD event. It was in Center City, maybe. Oh, it was during COVID because everyone was wearing masks, but it was an in-person thing, right? So meanwhile, we're all in person. We're all wearing a mask. And most people in that room, I believe, were like the perfect candidates. It was attracting trans people and gay people. They were GLAD was explaining it to the most receptive bunch of people. And I would say not only did 80% of the group start stumbling over the pronouns at that point, people were breaking out laughing. And you'd be like, oh my God, the horror. It's there were trans people there. They were announcing. And what GLAD said was no problem whatsoever. That it is new. It's new for everybody. And so when you stumble, and I always remember this, and I still do all the time, that it's you don't even apologize. Just correct it and move, because the apology comes off as you don't even have to worry about apologizing. Just, oh, I'm sorry that, or I'm sorry, she. And I've learned that. So I even love the fact that you try. That's all. I like the fact that you try. I think that's great. And no one's getting it 100% right. At least from my own experience. So I understand. I get it. And I respect the fact that you felt like I'm going to come in and acknowledge and correct it. I think that part's great. And again, I'll repeat, at least you're doing it, at least you're doing it. But you know what else I noticed? there is such a calmness to your voice. So my question is, how long in the video content did it take for you to realize this is really me? This is actually Maria Quattrone, not my real estate expertise or my tips or my, my what. When did you know that, oh, this is actually me speaking? Because I swear to God, I can hear it in you. Like when you started to speak calmly, I'm like, oh, that's her. Oh, that's her. How long did it take you to get to that point? Of the 800 plus, how long do you think it took you?
It was just recently.
What do you think changed?
Perspective.
Hmm.
I think also doing the work.
Hmm.
I don't think there's a shortcut. I think that the shortcut could be maybe getting tips from you.
Oh, and I didn't mean that to come off as self-serving. That's great.
And
I think
no,
you're doing the
and
work. You're doing the work.
tips
But
and
anyway, thank you.
guidance, but there is no replace for the work.
Mhm,
See, individually, we all have to do the work in some
mhm,
way, shape, or form. And having a coach to work around with that
mhm,
is great. But at the end of the day, there's nobody who can speak for you but you.
mhm,
There's nobody who can dial that phone and pick up that phone and make those calls but
mhm,
you. There's nobody that can make those videos or send that email.
mhm.
I'm sure you can have an assistant send your email, but you get the idea.
You got to follow up.
You get the idea. Nobody can do the work for
Mhm,
you but you,
mhm,
whatever that is. Nobody can lose the weight for you but yourself,
mhm.
right? Nobody can say, stop eating, drinking, gambling, sex,
All more.
whatever.
Do your follow-up, boss, more. You know what I mean? Putting more people into your CRM. Why aren't you seeing more people but you? I hear such when I speak with you, whether it's in person, it's amazing because your energy really comes out. Weird because you sound more calm, but your energy becomes so much more powerful. And that's to me, I think folks like when I say that, it's not just speaking with Maria specifically, but that's anybody that volume and pitch are great. You can't fake energy. You certainly can't fake authenticity. But I hear it and feel it when you're at your quietest. I'm like, I could feel my face and I'm embarrassed. If you're watching on video, I'll do it and I'll exaggerate. But I could feel myself like coming like literally facing into the screen. It's really powerful. And I love the fact, and folks, this is if there's no other takeaway, it's this one that works. None. It's a beautiful thing. Maria, two more questions, and you've been brilliant, and I'll just ask these two. What would you say, Chip, Maria's husband, what would you say makes Chip authentic? And what would you say, if I asked Chip, makes you authentic?
Oh gosh, this is a hard question.
That's a fun one, though.
So for Chip, I
Yeah.
would say he is one of the most endearing, kindest souls I've ever met.
Hmm.
He always wants to help other people. He's made me a better human,
Mhm.
being more empathetic with others.
Mhm.
I learned a lot. I still learn from him. He, a lot of times I would fight him on things, and he was always right. I was wrong. And I used to bully my way and push my way,
Mm.
yelling and screaming at
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
I learned, I got a lot of perspective over the last couple of
Mhm.
years.
Mhm.
And so there is a calmness that
Mhm.
I don't believe was there before. I had an issue with control,
Mhm.
and I wanted to control everything. And I learned control the controllables. And the only thing that you can control is yourself.
Mm.
That's it.
Mhm.
I can't control what people upstairs are doing. I can't control what, family does. I can't control
Mhm.
anything except for myself.
Mhm.
I promised myself that this morning I got up and said, the next 2 weeks of the holiday season are going to be the best 2 weeks ever. I am going to be joyful. I'm going to be happy. Not that I'm not happy every day, but this has been a very, very difficult couple years,
Mhm.
and it has been a struggle. So I'm going to focus on being joyful, being happy, being in the moment. Like I said, I decided not to host so that we can just enjoy. And I still am going to cook some things to bring because I never go empty-handed. I always bring extra stuff.
Mm.
So I'm excited about that. I would say, what would Chip say about me?
Yeah, what do you think?
Um, well, he would say that his belly is always full with yummy food. He would say that I am a great business person. I think he would say that. I always take care of him. He would say that my wife takes care of me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what prosciutto was or mozzarella was before I met her.
Mm-hmm.
Just being kidding. Um, what else would he say about me? He would say that I'm a good human,
Mm.
that I'm generous
Mm-hmm.
to a fault, and
Mm.
sometimes probably a little naive because I believe in that because I'm good, other people are good.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love it. Before I acknowledge you properly, I'll ask you this. What does I'm sorry, and he speaks for a living. What does authenticity mean to you?
Being your true self,
Mm.
showing up as the person that you're meant to be. And that person changes, right? As we personal development,
Mm-hmm.
the more we get to know ourselves, not only just know ourselves, but love ourselves for who we are, knowing that this body and this face is not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Real estate is not who I am.
Mm.
Business is not who I am. Your soul is who you are.
Mm.
And your soul has a presence, and your soul has a conscience, and your soul is what continues to live on. Being in alignment with God,
Mm-hmm.
being thankful and grateful,
Mm-hmm.
all part of authenticity.
Mm.
Not having an agenda. I don't go into things with like an agenda of like what, and maybe this is wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but I go in, I don't go in with agenda to saying I want a desired outcome.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the outcome is going to be
Mm.
because I may think I want to have a relationship with you, say platonically, since
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, John.
Yeah, right, right. Sorry. Hey, Chip, we're good.
No, I'm saying with anybody, right? So I may not.
Right.
I may meet you and decide you're a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
I never want to see you again.
Mm-hmm.
And you may be the best business contact for me in the world,
Mm-hmm.
but I never want to have set eyes on you again. So
Mm-hmm.
I just go in seeing like, how can I help?
Mm.
Can I help?
Mm-hmm.
And are you open and grateful for my assistance?
Mm.
But going back to authenticity, I
Yeah.
think it's like I'm the same person everywhere I go.
Mm-hmm.
Home, work, business,
Mm-hmm.
out. Sometimes I'm loud and
Mm-hmm.
boisterous. Sometimes I'm quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm overjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm just blah.
Mm-hmm.
Usually not blah, but sometimes. I think it's,
You're human
yeah, human.
in the best way. Maria Quattrone, I am honored. It was great. You're almost getting me like teared up toward the end. I love it. I'm really grateful that I get to know you. And the more that I get to know you, the luckier that I've happened to feel. And so I thank you from the bottom of my heart for showing up for me for this podcast today. It means the world to me. And just like I said, thank you for your presence.
John, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak
1,000%.
today and to answer all these great questions that
Thank
you
you.
had for me. I'm blessed and grateful. Thank you.
So, folks, I can answer the question for Maria probably because if you're anywhere near social, so come on, John. anywhere near social media, you will find her. But Maria, what's the best way that you would say? The best way to find me is?
Facebook, Maria Quattrone with a QUA. Or I'm at 21st and
Oh, we'll
South.
have those links. That's okay. With Facebook, certainly LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, Facebook, yeah. Or you can just call the office.
Just call the office. We'll have the office. We'll have the office phone number there as
Yeah,
well.
if you Google me, if you Google my name, it pops right up.
Of course it does. So, Maria Quattrone and Associates, being the solution. Well, be the solution. But the fact is, thanks so much for showing up today. Again, you were wonderful. Really appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you, John. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thankful and grateful.
Like right back at you. And folks, you've heard another episode of Your Message Received. Keep liking, following, subscribing, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. And we will keep continuing to drive content right through your front door. It's John Duffin here with Duffin Media. Thanks so much for showing up, and we will see you soon. Bye.
And now, making its way across the finish line, Your Message Received has been a production of Duffin Media.